So basically, we're lost.
In the first part, it's just Chantal and Karen that are talking, so no one has to move. But the moment Karen starts,
I have an idea. You guys go one step.
starting now.
Yeah, exactly. You guys move one chair, and then the person who just sits next to you guys. I am starting.
You can start here.
But it's almost like a switch. Why don't you guys, you two,
Okay.
sit here, and then the person who comes switches with you. So they have to see the person comes. Get what I mean?
That makes sense in terms of who's going to talk.
So,
In the first part, it's just an order where.
Julia,
I want to sit next to
if they sit there, they move one seat, the person who switches goes. So, because man needs to be next to Karen.
Okay,
anyways,
okay.
And the person who
Abdullah,
switches
I got it.
would be, look natural. So you guys go there.
Sir, please sit down. Oh, Nathan. And then what? It's gonna be empty.
Look how out of place he looks, and then we're gonna have another.
So out of place.
Exactly. So I think.
Are you okay with like sitting? Miss, don't do it for me, Sabah. We're still
Live streaming Abdullah, did we? I will be happy to explain this to you later.
Is my mom in the live?
I will study the night now.
Okay, Miss, can I just come in? Okay, is my mom, is Al Fajr on the live? Is Al Fajr on the live? Where's my mom?
My family's. Okay, I'm honestly offended. I'm going to call my
You might.
This is all right.
You see Al Fajr joining this summit. Okay, so what are we gonna do now?
Okay, I have. In the first part, it's Chantal. Are you gonna ask anything to Elif or Nathan?
No, it's just
Are you talking to Elif or Nathan?
we have 5
So I think just Abdullah, Khalid, and Maryam do their thing. Isn't Khalid and Maryam gonna?
because Abdullah's going first, so he needs to be on stage now. That's why I'm saying let's grab a chair, let's put it here. And then once he's
Rotate.
yes.
Okay, this chair is like QAD chair.
Not that one, not that one, not that one. You need this like the line for the train. Grab that one there.
Special request from our students to see.
That one there. That one there. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Or the person who just sits there and you go from there.
It's okay. We can. Don't like. Do it.
This can be like the QAD chair.
Just be like. Yeah, you can like lean forward.
Miss, what are they saying about me?
Say, can we please get comments from the audience? We have a good luck, guys, from Mohammed bin Hassan. Thank you so much, Mohammed. Hey, do I sound like a young Instagrammer yet?
You're amazing. You're an amazing miss. You're doing great. You're doing great. This is a very beautiful, way of speech. I don't know.
Okay, you know what, Amaya? And Khalid, this will be the QAD chair, okay? There's never a time where two QAD will be on stage. So when Abdullah's done, they're gonna make it.
Your mother just sent you a good luck. Perfect. Thank you so much. I don't know who this is, Abdullah, but somebody called ABK_M says you're looking extra good today. Who? ABK_M.
I wonder when I can.
There'll be a time where Maryam and Khalid are both on stage.
Sorry?
There'll be a time where Maryam and Khalid will be both on stage.
Your mother is saying good luck, Abdullah. Who is saying good luck, guys?
It's so cute.
I don't know who FS is. She's saying me and Ahmed love Abdullah very much. We hope he's doing the best.
Aww.
Love Abdullah. Thank you so much. I sending so much love to Abdullah.
It's so
Somebody
cute.
called Ahbabi saying Abdullah heart.
Abdullah, your entire family's here. No, not family, friends. Oh, your friends.
We're about to start in 1 minute.
You okay, Nathan?
I'm down to saying good luck to everyone as well. Thank you.
Oh, thanks,
Okay. I factory. Thank you, Mom. This is scary.
You don't need to wear a mask,
على كده في الناس جاب لك عبد الله عشان يديني بس ففي جلد عليه قال يو عبد الله you won't be the best you are the best
Thank you. Testing, testing.
هو لا يبي this
This, right? Actually, which one was this? Oh, look, there's a screen there.
guys if you ever need to look at the location there's a screen there
Nice. I feel like that was purposeful.
sorry because we never had to practice it
It's really nice.
starting thank you I'm done yes second and one
Miss, can we-
Good morning all, buongiorno a tutti, and welcome to Thymen Qatar's panel. We are a student-run organization based in Doha, Qatar, and we deal with Model United Nations. To further introduce ourselves today, we'd like to direct your attention to a video being screened just above me here with everyone in it so that you can get to know us a little bit. If we could play the video, please. Ready. Practice. Everyone, ready?
Practice. I love how the family team gets all the behind the scenes and they're seeing it all.
Hello.
Testing.
We know the start is good.
Yeah. Yeah. This is something that you get my mom to be asking questions.
this meeting out
morning all, buongiorno a tutti, and welcome to Thymen Qatar's panel. We are a student-run Model United Nations organization based in Doha, Qatar. And to further introduce ourselves today, we'd like to direct your attention to a video being screened just above me here, so you can get to know us a little bit. If we could have the video played, please. Okay, so with some technical difficulties out of the way, we'll introduce ourselves in person. So I will go first. I'm Julia Pina. I'm the Secretary General of Thymen Qatar this year. And through this panel, I really hope that we can bridge the gaps between our communities to ensure that we're all using MUN to enact global change and educate the youth on advocacy. Naufal, would you like to introduce yourself?
So, buongiorno, my name is Muhammad Alif Naufal, and I'm the President of General Assembly of Thymen Qatar 2022, and I hope with MUN I'll be able to deliver some service projects to help out the local community in Qatar. And in this panel, I hope that I can show you guys how you can use MUN to connect with external organizations or stakeholders. So, Kaina, would you like to go next?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Keanu Almeri. I am one of the executive team members for Thymen Qatar 2020, and I'm very passionate about the sustainable development goals and uplifting and empowering the youth. I'm so excited to be on this panel today, and I hope that we have a very fruitful discussion. Xiang Tong, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Kayana. Good morning, buongiorno. My name is Shang Tong Liu, and I am serving as the Deputy Secretary General of Thymen Qatar 2022. And I hope that today's panel will be a showcase of what the youth can achieve. And thank you all for joining us this morning. Over to you, Nathan.
Buongiorno, I'm Nathan Wijayaratne, one of the DPGAs, or the Presidents of General Assembly this year at Thymen Qatar. And my role as the President of General Assembly is to connect the youth to service activities, for them to use MUN as a way to actually achieve change in their communities. And in this panel, I hope to showcase how the youth can move to advocacy naturally from discussion. Thank you. And could I call upon Abdullah to introduce himself?
Assalamu alaikum. Buongiorno. My name is Abdullah Darwish, and I'm a member of the Qatar Academy Doha executive team, and I'm a student officer at Thymen as well. My panel is going to be about what is MUN, how it works, and how it applies to youth advocacy. So I'd like to pass it on to Maryam.
Hello everyone, I'm Maryam. I'm also a member of the Thymen Qatar executive team. I serve as Deputy Head of Admin, and my panel today is going to be talking about moving from action plan to taking action and the process, and also discuss the importance.
Hi everyone, my name is Noura Miftah. I'm a student officer at Thymen 2022, and I'm also the Vice President of QADMUN's club. And my discussion today is going to be about how to choose the most engaging issues regarding SDG 13 and in MUN conferences. I'll pass it on to Khalid.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Khalid al-Nabti, and in this panel, I'm actually really excited for it because I'll be able to talk about my experience with QADMUN and me being executive in it, as well as I'll be able to talk about my experience being a Thymen Qatar associate through creating a renewable energy generator project. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. So that's us. And today, inspired by this Youth EcoSoc statement from 2017, "Nothing about us without us," this panel will discuss how we, the youth, can develop education for advocacy through Model UN. So advocacy, the active support for a cause, is often led by adults. I see many of you in here, so apologies for the words that will come next. Professionals like you who inevitably overlook our ideas and our views. What Thymen Qatar aims to do is drive education for advocacy so that we, the youth, are able to spearhead programs on global issues. To us, education for advocacy means ensuring that the youth can have a global impact and a local impact on the issues that we are most passionate about. As Thymen is completely student-run, as you can see, we lead by example. We ensure that all students have a role to play in all of our activities. Beyond the resolution setting and the debates, we go through stakeholders in each issue. We invite them to talk at our conferences. And we hope that students are able to engage with all these people to maximize their understanding of global issues. We do this through the Global Act with Impact Awards and many other initiatives that my panelists here will go through. And we hope that today, by sharing our experiences further with all of you, we hope that education for advocacy is implemented in all of our communities. So to start off today, Abdullah, would you like to tell us a bit more about Model United Nations and what it is?
So Model United Nations, also known as MUN, is an organization that simulates the United Nations in order to help our understanding of the United Nations and how it works in its processes and its different factors. So schools programs use Model United Nations in order to help develop the public speaking skills, diplomacy, and other skills that can be useful in the future. So what Model United Nations does is also teach advocacy. How you may ask? Well, Model United Nations teaches advocacy because it allows the youth and young people to understand issues around them and their surroundings and identify them and also overcome them. So that is why Model United Nations teaches advocacy and how it's important for the youth.
Yes, it's incredibly important. I completely agree with you. And I know you mentioned the skills that we learn through Model United Nations. So Shang Tong, would you like to build on that? What are the skills?
Yep, so Model United Nations for me is so much more than just an experience. It is important for us all to recognize that through these experiences, we develop lifelong skills. And it is these skills that enable the youth of today to develop education for advocacy, as it allows us to bring our voices and our actions beyond the MUN community into the wider society so that we can build change through youth conferences.
And you've talked about how important these skills are, but what exactly are they? How do we build them in MUN and how do we use them outside of our committee rooms?
So there are countless skills one can acquire through participating or organizing MUN conferences. Today I will be highlighting a few of the key transferable skills, one of which being the skill of problem solving. A lot of the times what determines the quality of a conference plan is not necessarily the procedural plan, but rather the contingency plan for unpredictable circumstances, as it ensures the successful execution of the normal plan by maintaining normal conditions through risk management. As part of MUN, organizers are constantly actively anticipating potential issues or problems that may arise during our conference and acting or implementing measures to prevent and mitigate their impacts. For example, at the start of an MUN conference, we would anticipate that delegates would be less inclined to speak as they're still getting used to the new environment, which we completely understand. So as MUN organizers, it is up to us to implement measures to mitigate the situation by perhaps asking chairs to run a quick debate activity so that everyone is in debate mode, or to have a moderated caucus to allow the delegates more time to scrutinize the resolution and to formulate their speeches so that they can engage in a more fruitful debate afterwards. Aside from that, it is the COVID-19 pandemic that has really affected all of us in every way possible that has pushed the MUN organizers to problem solve one of the biggest issues they have come to face. As Abdullah has mentioned earlier, Model United Nations is a simulation of the United Nations justified by the notion that we as learners build an understanding of the world around us through simulations, through experiences. So live lobbying, live debating, live policy making are the critical elements of an MUN conference. And with the worldwide lockdown, it has been a huge shock to the thriving MUN community as it removes the integral part of a conference. Despite this, it is probably one of the best examples of problem solving in the realm of MUN, as it has really pushed all MUN organizers around the world, myself alike, to combat the COVID restrictions by bringing MUN online. And it is this resilience in the face of a challenge, this flexibility to adapt to changes, and this proactivity to address the issue that is so essential and what we can bring into our communities to channel the awareness, the advocacy, the impact that we cultivate in MUN into our communities.
Thank you, Shantong, and that is so very important. What we're trying to prove here is that the skills that we learn in MUN, be it just a student-run organization, are so applicable to all of our lives and all of the things that we do in our lives. So Kayana, you are an example of this in practice. You were an executive team, you were part of the executive team for Thymen 2020, and this was unexpectedly turned into an online conference. Can you talk to us a bit more about how exactly you managed to pull that off so well?
Thank you, Julia. So yeah, Thymen's annual conference last year was pushed forward into an online conference, and we have a lot of experience in creating an event that is in person, and we've had so much powerful events in the past before. So going into an online environment was so new for us. It felt like something that was very scary at first, but we navigated it by collaborating and communicating to each other all of our conference experience that we've gathered while attending other online conferences. Using all of this knowledge, we were able to translate an in-person event into an online one very smoothly. We took into consideration that people's morales might be very low, and people genuinely are more exhausted and more tired having these long conference days over the internet. We adapted and implemented lots of breaks, lots of interesting and very thought-provoking activities such as crisis committees that would come into the conference room and give a very interesting situation to the delegates so that they were able to explore beyond what they were just debating about. I think that this experience really pushed us forward as an organization and as a team because we were able to really be efficient in our communication, because obviously online we're not next to each other and we don't know what's going on. So we really had to be pinpoint and we had to be very intentional with everything we did. I think that, yeah, it was such a wonderful learning experience.
It was, and not just for Thymen Qatar. So many of our conferences back in Doha had to make this very drastic change very quickly. And this shows exactly, as both Shantong and Kayana mentioned, how applicable the skills that we learn are. Shantong, are there any more skills that we should go through today?
Yeah, so another key skill that we gain from running MUN conferences is the skill of innovation. Be it introducing youth issues into our debates, procedural reforms, or starting brand new initiatives that we will go into later during our panel, Model United Nations builds original thinkers. People who don't only come up with new ideas, but work to enhance the existing ideas. These are thinkers that are constantly doubting the default for a better option. And this skill of innovation is exactly what my school's MUN club, Doha College Model United Nations, has used to create a new impact initiative called Project One Small Step, which you should be able to see some infographics of on our slide. Project One Small Step aims to raise awareness and drive action on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals within our school community. And what cultivated this idea was the thought that a lot of people, particularly the youth of today, are aware and very much invested in driving change and solving these global issues that permeate our world today. However, many of us are hindered by the notion that our actions are too small of a step in the right direction. To be very frank, I can relate to that and have so on several occasions. However, it cannot be further from reality. So as a DCMUN executive team, we got together and launched Project One Small Step so that we can encourage students within our school to make small adjustments to their daily routine or commit to certain small actions that are relevant to the Sustainable Development Goals so that we as a school community can come together to realize the power in our small actions to become and make a big difference. And in fact, Julia and I have been working on this with a couple of our executive team members. And I was wondering, Julia, if you could give us more of an insight into how we were able to bridge MUN with our school community to use innovation to drive advocacy.
Yeah, Shansong, so I really want to draw on that idea of bridging the divide between MUNers and just normal school students. Obviously, very, very often we focus on the role delegates have to play in all of our service projects and our events. The goal with OSS was to bridge this divide and ensure that the action taken on SDGs was taken by everyone as a school community. And this is something that we would love to see implemented elsewhere. This is something that we were inspired by Thymen to do. And so the goal with this, as Shansong said, was to really ensure that small actions were taken by everyone, and the key here is to ensure that these actions are small and that can be taken by really anyone in the community, whether lectured on the SDGs or not. And this is how we bridge this divide. However, there are so many other divides within MUN that we come to notice and we really want to solve. And Shang Tong came up with a very different initiative to solve this divide. So why don't you talk us through the Qatar Youth Power Conference?
Yep, so being such complex events, Model United Nations really challenge organizers to constantly engage ourselves with different elements of conference planning and execution, from logistics and communication to outreach and administration. Organizational skill is a key transferable skill that we're able to gain from MUN, and it is one of which that I've been able to use in starting the Qatar-based conference called Qatar Youth Power, or QIP. QIP is a student-initiated conference in Qatar with a mission to develop and empower the youth in Qatar by connecting them with change makers in Qatar. Just over a month before the date of our conference, myself and 6 other high school students in Qatar, who all happen to be MUN organizers, got together with the ambitious idea that later attracted over 1,000 youth applicants and 30 Qatar changemakers.
And this wasn't done by Shang Tong alone. As she mentioned, she worked with other student leaders in Qatar to pull this off. And Kayana is one, and she's here with us. So why don't you build on this idea of Qatar Youth Power and how you can draw on the MUN organizational skills to organize so much more?
Sure. So this conference was organized in a very short period of time, I think a month. And we were able to do this so quickly because we really went in there head first. We divided and conquered every organizational aspect of this conference. So I was part of the IT and logistics team, and Shang Tong, I think you were part of outreach. And we had other of the other high school members be part of media or be part of communications. But during the actual conference itself, once we put everything together, we really took our decision-making skills and we implemented them almost in every part of the schedule. We had to make a lot of time-sensitive decisions that balanced the strictness and the flexibility of time management within an event. And I think that was, we couldn't have navigated this world if it was not for our experience in organizing MUN conferences. Wouldn't you agree, Shang Tong?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And just adding to this whole skills discussion, I would like to say that the skills that I just brought up only go as far as to show that MUN gives its participants and organizers the capacity to run great school community youth conferences. But at the core of running an MUN conference is that it teaches us as the youth why we are starting these programs, why we are running these initiatives and these conferences. It is the motivation behind it that defines the outcome. So I would like to highlight, perhaps even more than the skills that we gain from MUN, is that it teaches the youth of today about their responsibility and power over the global issues, and that we can care, therefore we should care, so we can act, and therefore should act.
Thank you so much, Shantong. And this idea of motivating the youth and only being able to pull off these initiatives by motivating the youth draws me to our next point, which is inspiring youth through the actions taken by adults and other innovators in our communities. And one way in which we do this is through our Qatar Leadership Conference. And this is where we not only invite local advocates, but students to talk about their ideas and their views on issues ranging everywhere from sustainable architecture to entrepreneurship. This is how we build and we forge partnerships across our community to ensure that everyone is taking a really active role in our community and in solving the sustainable development goals. Furthermore, in our Thymen conference this year, we have invited stakeholders to talk on the issues that we treat in our conference. This encourages the empathy, yet another MUN skill that we build, and ensures that all the work done by delegates and chairs and everyone present in our conferences is really centered around the issues and how to solve them, and centered around the experiences of the people involved. And so this is how we bridge the local with the global and the younger with the older delegates, but also the MUNers with the non-MUN students. And so now I'd like to call on Kayana again to talk about how we implement SDGs and SDG projects within our conferences.
Thank you, Julia. So for this section of the panel, I'm going to be talking about how including sustainable development goals within community service is such a vital part of the planning, execution, and participation of a conference. My colleague Mariam and I have a lot of experience in organizing and participating in these community service projects. So one of the problems that we really recognized was that there was such a lack of youth presence in the organizational aspects of conferences and of events, and even of policymaking, as we've seen. So how we've tackled this is that every single part of our conference and our community service is by the youth and for the youth. So I really feel like the lack of youth presence is such a robbery of our voices. I'm so grateful to be joined here by such passionate, driven minds who are educated, and it is such a waste of potential and ideas to exclude us from the conversation. The solution that we've come up with, especially the Thymen Qatar 2020 executive team, is that we've included the youth in every single part of the planning and process of all of these activities that we'll be talking about today. So to give a brief introduction of the importance of taking action outside of the debate room is that, so we've seen how the conference has given a very collaborative environment for many passionate youth to think up of great solutions and great ideas. But I think what's even more powerful is if we translate them into meaningful service. Bridging the gap and getting youth to participate in hands-on services not only enforces reality, but it holds them accountable. It inspires them. And we obviously uplift other communities as well. So the question I want to ask to Mariam is, why do you think it's so important to give the youth knowledge and opportunity to make change?
One thing I'd like to mention is that the youth is capable of transporting information in the fastest ways. So they're capable of informing others, encouraging others. For example, if my friends would do something, you're encouraged, you're motivated. Seeing someone your age, seeing someone doing something and strong enough to do it, you know for a fact that you are capable of doing it as well. When the youth has power, and has motivation, the youth can change. So the main thing here is that not everyone understands the youth is very creative. They're critical thinkers, and they can come up with solutions in the fastest ways. That's why it's really important to give the youth as much power and understanding, and educating them is the main part, because when they're educated on something, they start to become more passionate and more motivated and want to more motivate and encourage others about this issue. So I think that motivating others is one of the most important things the youth is capable of doing. For example, creating trends. You know, one time a tote bag can be a trend. Tote bag is is something that's eco-friendly, so people would stop using plastic bags. You know, that can happen a trend. Mugs can be a trend. You know, reusable. Whatever, anything can become helpful and motivated, and it can encourage other members and other youth members to start and educate others as well. So, Kiana, do you agree?
Definitely, I definitely agree. And one of the other impacts of creating community service projects is we're obviously contributing to achieving the SDG goals.
Yeah.
So we can just go straight into the examples of these community service. I'm very excited to talk about them. So one of the first examples I'd like to talk about is the Thymen Global Acts for Impact Award. So this is an award that Thymen facilitates, evaluates, and judges, where we give an opportunity and a platform for students to create impact projects completely on their own, independent, but we help them through all of the process and all of the judging as well. And these projects are in alignment with the SDG goals. They are free to choose from all of the SDG goals and impact their communities in any way they like. So not only is this a platform for youth voice, this competition also provides funding and publicity to incentivize the youth to achieve the SDG goals. And I think that this concept, the concept of this competition, can be implemented everywhere. It's an opportunity for them to lead initiatives that enrich their own communities. So one of the initiatives, which I really hope the video can play, because this initiative is basically by one of the schools, and they've created an initiative where they educate the people in their community about period poverty. And this is such a taboo topic, but it is in alignment with the SDG 13, which is climate action. And the school has really uplifted women in their community by providing them knowledge, by providing them the facilities, and by providing them education. Can you guys play the video?
I think we might have to skip the videos for today. Unfortunately, the technical issues are really frustrating. But would you like to describe anything more about the project?
Yeah, so this project, they actually included everyone in the conversation. As you can see, these girls are talking to all of their classmates, and they've interviewed a lot of people. They've, you know, really emphasized that this is such an imminent problem, and women are struggling all over the world. The next example I'd like to talk about is the hydroponic greenhouses that one of our schools have completely built on their own, which is absolutely amazing. And they've grown crops, they've grown apples, they've grown carrots, and considering that this is in Qatar, we have very, very, very hot summers. So I really think that they took this to another level, and this is really the materialization of what happens when you give youth the knowledge and the opportunity to really step up for their community.
Thank you so much, Kiana. And this shows exactly how this is how we implemented it in our community. But this is something that is so easily implemented everywhere. By creating competitions, you motivate the youth to take action on the Sustainable Development Goals. And you really center their focus around achievable goals and just putting them in action in their own community. And one other thing we would like to talk about is Rengen today, right?
Just before we move on, can I ask Kiana a quick question?
Sure.
What were some of the difficulties you faced with this challenge or competition?
So I think this competition gives a lot of the schools the creative freedom to do anything they want to impact their communities. This opens up a window of vagueness, so a lot of schools kind of came to us confused at some point. And how we tackled this was we hosted a lot of workshops that structured the competition in a way where we could quantify it and we could judge it. And I think that it was a really good sort of like session where they could ask us all of the questions that they had, and this is how we tackled this problem.
And how did people commit? Like, how are you so sure? How can you motivate the youth to do something? Because sometimes they can be a bit lazy.
Yeah.
So how did you motivate them to process this?
Of course. So because this is such a long sort of spread out project, we were expecting that, you know, some people would drop out or they wouldn't be committed, but I really believe that because Thymen has hosted this competition for years now, we've hosted it annually for the past, I don't know, we've hosted it for a very long time, and I think that people can really see the consistency of the impact it's created in our community. So seeing and feeling it touching your own community and uplifting your own community is such a powerful and wonderful feeling. This is why people and all of the schools in Qatar come to us to join this competition time and time again so that they can really build and enrich not only themselves, but also people around them. Yeah.
Okay, we can move to Ranjan now.
Thank you so much for your questions, Mariam. Yeah. So Khalid, you started the Ranjan project in your own school. Can you talk to us a bit about that? Because this is exactly how this competition and all of our service projects motivate action within our community, and Khalid is a perfect example of that.
My project, which is Ranjan, started off as an idea in my mind that I was motivated to build upon. But after joining Model United Nations program as an executive, I had actually been given the ability to build upon this idea and bring it to life. So I had joined with another student as well as the Model United Nations program director to convince the university right next to our school to implement this project into their youth program. And the project itself consists of renewable energy generators and lectures. So the lectures consist of the disadvantages, advantages, and economics of renewable energy and non-renewable energy, and in what forms both of them come in. And there is also the competition where the students would design and build renewable energy generators in the labs of the university, and they would compete to see which renewable energy generator would produce the most energy.
Thank you, Khalid. And Mariam, seeing as your questions are lovely, do you have any to ask Khalid?
Just one more quick question. So how is this the process? How can you implement it in other places? Is it feasible?
This project is, for me, it took me about 3 weeks to plan this project, including how I talked with the university next to our school. But in general, in 2015, the United Nations Security Council had adopted a resolution in which it mandated that youth be included in policy making. And this has led to like an avalanche type effect where it has spread to different types of foundations and organizations. One of them being our foundation, for the foundation of our school, Qatar Foundation, which has a lot of universities. And one of these universities had expanded upon its youth programs. So that's what makes the ability for youth to join programs much more easy after 2015. As also, the universities now, they like to include more youth in their already existing programs.
Thank you, Khalid. Moving on, we also have many other initiatives like beach cleanups, tree planting. Kiana, do you want to talk about like the amount of trees planted and talk more about the Doha Environmental Actions Project?
Of course, Mariam. So one of the projects that we have initiated is tree planting. This is where Thymen Qatar collaborated with the Qatar Foundation Quranic Botanic Gardens, where all students from Qatar Foundation could come together, and I think we've planted over 200 trees. I think this was a very powerful and impactful way that all of the youth came together in one of our service projects. Moving along to the beach cleanups, as Mariam mentioned, we collaborated with Doha Environmental Actions Project in Qatar, and we arranged a beach cleanup where middle and high school students could come and clean up an entire stretch of a beach. We found a lot of interesting things on the beach, and this is where we really realized how bad the plastic pollution is in our community. So some of the things we found were, carpets, toilet seats, and some of the most heartbreaking things we found were there were sea animals and turtles with plastic inside their mouths and fish with plastic inside their bellies. I really think that this emphasized how present and imminent the plastic pollution problem was, especially to the people who picked all of it up. And we saw it with our own eyes. It was very reality enforcing, and not only did this inspire us to be more sustainable, but it also held us accountable. We live in the city and we were very far from the coast, but just because we couldn't see it doesn't mean it's not there. I think that, this was such an eye-opening experience, and participating and organizing it also really emphasized that for me.
Thank you so much, Kayana and Mariam. And I would just like to say, this is exactly how not only the Global Act with impact towards enforce action and motivate people to take their own action, but how, as Khalid explained, there are so many projects which can be taken in collaboration with institutions all over the world to really make an impact on the Sustainable Development Goals. And as Kayana went through the beach cleanup and tree planting events, I'm not sure if you are all familiar on the environment in Qatar, but there is very little trees, and so 200 trees to us makes a lot of difference, and it really shows how we can simply just implement the Sustainable Development Goals ourselves. And so now I'd like to throw it back to Mariam, because she has her own project, the Reduce, Reuse, Recycle campaign, which is another example of just how impactful we ourselves can be. So can you talk to us a bit about that?
Okay, I'll go over just a little brief because we're going to be explaining our projects a little bit later. So basically, the goal was I created a challenge to help support the youth and make it easy and creative and fun for us. Because sometimes when it's not fun, when it's not something we can enjoy, we're not interested in doing it. So I created a challenge where people in Doha, the youth and anyone, can start collecting recyclable materials at home and sending them to their nearest recycling centers. One thing I want to mention that, it's not easy for someone to just go start and zero waste, zero recycling, zero plastic. That's something very difficult and almost impossible, especially with COVID. So one thing I want to mention is that people should start off going step by step and slowly, because we can't reach the top without starting from the bottom. So you start off, recycling, avoiding plastic, abiling materials that can harm our ocean. And I think that's the goal. That was the main goal, to start, going slowly and then slowly reaching to 100%, which is almost impossible, like I mentioned. Another thing I want to talk about is educating the younger generation. Personally, I find that educating the younger generation is very important. So I also did a little bit of quizzes for them, to introduce them and to talk and educate them more about the importance of recycling, the importance of reducing waste, and that was another part of the campaign that I created.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to this idea of educating the younger generation. As you said, we can only reach the top if we start from the bottom, and this goes hand in hand with teaching the younger generation all about SDGs and involving them in our projects through really small steps. And this is exactly what we did, as Shantong and I mentioned, through our project One Small Step. We really want to start from the ground up in all of our communities to ensure that this project is continued throughout our delegates' lives and throughout students' lives. I'd like to, as well as going from the younger to the older generations, we also need to ensure that we bridge the gap between different interests. We can't expect only MUNers to be interested in the Sustainable Development Goals. That won't enact any change in our communities. This is why Kayana implemented the art competition. So tell us a bit more about it.
So in Thymen 2020 and 2019, we created a climate action art competition, and this really gave students the opportunity to bridge the gap between the debate room and creative mediums outside of it. It really helped to showcase the different ways that the problems can be interpreted within the artistic mediums. And as you guys can see on the slides, these pieces are absolutely beautiful. They've been submitted by high school students and middle school students, and it really visualizes how imminent and how bad the problem is. I'll look through This one was very, very impactful. This one was one of my friends who submitted it. And as you can see, this piece of artwork really helps you to visualize how the SDGs play as a part of the problem and as part of the solution as well. This one was also one of my favorites. It's, as you can see, very, very impactful. And showing all of these artworks and giving the people the opportunity to create these pieces was really important for us, because we didn't want MUN just to be all about politics and debates. Of course, that's important, but we also wanted to let the youth express themselves in another way.
Yeah, and these are just a few of the examples of the submissions that we achieved for this art competition. And this is a wonderful example of how art students can be involved in the Sustainable Development Goals. It shouldn't only be limited to the MUN community. And so this is how individuals from our team, and there are so many other examples in Qatar. Unfortunately, we couldn't bring half of our population with us to this panel today. This is how we implemented this. Now I'd like to go through Aleph and Nathan and how you guys implemented in your team within Thymen Qatar.
All right, thank you, Julia. So before I start, I'd like to reiterate and reintroduce what MUN really is. So Abdullah has already stated that MUN is a simulation of the United Nations, where students are able to discuss and debate about global prevalent issues and then come up with solutions for it. But other than MUN being used as a platform to learn about debating skills and public speaking skills, it is also a platform for students to implement change. So a lot of the other panelists have already elaborated on projects, and this is a huge part of MUN. And we even, in Thymen Qatar, we even specifically have a team called the PGA team, the President of General Assembly team, in which I am lucky enough to be leading this year. And the main goal of our team is to run these service projects and help out the local community or even the global community. So half the time, I mean, almost all the time actually, these projects are completely student-led. So we come up with a project, we come up with the action plan to implement these projects. And so ultimately, at the end of the day, we are the ones that are benefiting from it. We learn the skills to implement these projects. And other than these advocacy skills that we learn, we also learn communication and collaboration skills. How can this be? Well, it's because through these projects, we are able to connect with external organizations and stakeholders. We can't run all of these projects ourselves. We need help ultimately. So, for example, as Kayana's team last year, they created the beach cleanup initiative, and they didn't do it themselves. They reached out to the Doha Environmental and Actions Project organization, and they helped them out. So really, MUN is a platform where students are able to learn advocacy skills to run their own projects, but at the same time, they're also there to learn communication and collaboration skills to be able to effectively communicate with stakeholders, with perhaps even UN ambassadors or climate change activists. And this is really the power of MUN. So Nathan, being part of the PGA team this year as well, how do you think that MUN is a tool to empower connection to external organizations or stakeholders?
Thank you, Aleph. And before I go into talking about empowering students, I would like to focus on how MUN can really be used to educate. And we love to say that only for us, nothing for us without us. However, how can we really be present if we're not educated? And yesterday, I was lucky enough to listen to the Italian Minister for Education, and he really believed in educating the youth today about climate change. He wanted a curriculum that focused on current global issues, such as climate change, to be integrated into curriculums all around the world to really help students achieve and gain an understanding of the most pressing issues that the world faces. And I believe that MUN is a great tool to achieve this. This is because students are not only taught about a specific issue, but taught about every single major issue around the world every year, and they're able to gain a proper understanding of these issues through debate and discussion. And not only are they able to gain an understanding of these issues, but they're also able to come up with solutions to these issues. Because once you have an understanding, it is not enough to just shelve it at the back of your mind. you also need to actively come forward and come up with solutions. And this leads me on to why MUN can be used to empower. As I said, we're forced basically to come up with solutions. Even if we don't have the best understanding, we're still supposed to brainstorm, we're supposed to discuss, and we're supposed to come up with the best solutions that we can to issues. And this leads us to have connections with some people who are more knowledgeable than us, who have a better understanding of the issue. And with this entrepreneurial skills and connections that people that we make, we're able to gain youth empowerment through MUN. And I would like to call upon one of my experiences from last year. I was able to attend the Kyoto Crime Congress for the Youth. And in this conference, I was able to connect with different leaders from Japan, around the world, around Europe, etc., to discuss criminal justice, and specifically criminal justice for youth offenders. And I was extremely passionate about this because we are all the youth, and imagine we were in a position that we were forced to commit crimes just to make ends meet. And so bringing a group of students who had similar views, maybe some with differing views to me, I was able to really gain an understanding of this issue and also find solutions that at the end of the conference were actually presented to the UNODC. And so this really shows how Model UN can be used to empower. And I would like to go back onto Alif. So we know that MUN and other platforms such as the Qatar Leadership Conference are great in terms of driving youth empowerment and education on these issues. But how do you think the general audience here can use similar pathways to use platforms where you discuss to come up with solutions, and how can they implement these in their own communities to drive change?
So we actually have a discussion point after this to talk about that, but I'm just going to skim through it lightly. So first of all, with a project, there needs to be a problem, there needs to be an issue, perhaps in your community or the global community. There has to be an issue in which you want to tackle. And so once you first identify that issue, you need to brainstorm of ideas on how you as the youth or maybe as adults can tackle that problem yourselves. So you need to brainstorm these ideas and implement these and then think of a plan to run the idea. But of course, you can't always run projects yourselves. You need help sometimes, and as Nathan said, you might not always be the most knowledgeable on the issue, so you need to reach out to other people to have a higher understanding of the issue. And to do that, you need to connect with other people, reach out to organizations, reach out to impactful people, and find out more about the issue and how you yourself can make a difference to that issue. So now I'll pass it on to Julia, as we have a specific discussion point for this where we can go into this in deeper detail.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alif. So we want to draw on what everything Alif just said about implementing this in our own communities, and we want to throw it to you, the audience. I would like to ask you if you have any problems in your own communities that we could go through in today's panel and discuss solutions to. So please raise your hands if you have any problems in your communities that you would like to contribute to the panel. This can be relating to any SDG, whether it's on climate or anything else, and we can implement it to our Gaia framework. Yeah, Ms. Fatima, please.
Casual audience member. There's a massive issue of food wastage. How would you apply MUN skills to address the issue of food wastage in our communities?
So one way we can go about this is through our Global Act with Impact Toward frameworks. And because Kayana is so knowledgeable on the subject, I'd like to throw it to you so you can explain how to implement this through this framework.
Of course. So this is a little bit of a boil down of our Global Act for Impacts framework. The first step is to investigate, and I think Alif can elaborate a little bit more on that. So investigating the issue would just mean questioning and collecting the data and the evidence that the problem is there and it is present and affecting people. So we have to define who is affected, why they're affected, when it is affecting them, and other questions. Alif, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, so exactly. So what I said earlier is when you want to have a project, there needs to be a problem, right? So you need to investigate the problem. What exactly is the problem and why is the problem? So you need to find the root causes for the issue. So the best way to tackle an issue is to find the root cause and then address those root causes directly. So other than trying to help out with the issue, you're only going to be, just helping out the people affected. You're not going to be addressing the issue directly. So to completely eradicate the issue, you need to tackle the root problems themselves.
Of course, so applying it to Ms. Fatima's example for food waste, what do you think the root cause of that would be in Qatar?
I guess the root cause of that in Qatar is that because honestly a lot of people are privileged over there, and you know we have a lot of food to spare, so no one really has that in their mentality that, oh, we need to save this food for tomorrow, because in their minds they're like, tomorrow we can get more food. So that's kind of like a major problem that I think that should be addressed.
Of course, yeah, and we can move on to planning and preparation as well. So this stage of the Gaia framework is where students come together to put together a timeline, establish their SMART goals, and go into time management as well as project management as well. Because food waste, let's say, tackling inside a community, it's such a big, broad scope of a problem that you need to break it down and really delegate your tasks and divide and conquer wisely. Alif, what do you think?
Yeah, so I agree. So to apply to the issue of food wastage, we need to think of a realistic solution, right? We can't just go for like a huge, just come up with some random huge solution for it. We need to think it realistically. Is it within your budget? Is it within your time frame? Do you have the resources to implement that solution, right? That project. So, Kayana, do you have any ideas on perhaps how it can be applied to the issue of food wastage?
So, for example, when delegating the tasks in creating this project for food wastage, maybe one person could contact other organizations to deal and recycle, maybe even compost the food waste. And I think I want to pass it on to Nathan because I know that he has a similar project. So, would you like to add anything?
Yes, so specifically on the part of reflecting about why food waste is a problem in Qatar. Going back to what Alif said, as to food wastage in Qatar is largely due to the privilege that the people have in not needing to worry about what they will have to eat tomorrow. But we can also draw on to restaurants in Qatar because a lot of them often waste a large quantity of food. And so when you reflect on that, you're able to find solutions to these problems. Why can't you set up a program to collect these foodstuffs? In certain countries, there are different food collection agencies that collect food from people who have surplus amounts of it and then distribute these to those who don't. And even in restaurants where certain regulations force them to throw out food that may perfectly be edible, establishing these programs to collect and redistribute these foods can really tackle the problem of food wastage in this problem itself. And so the point about reflecting on the certain idea is extremely important. And I believe this is where Gaia really shines. So Kayana, I pass it back to you to show how these projects can be demonstrated.
Sorry, real quick, Nathan. I'd like to ask a question. Do you think that maybe this food shortage problem, the food waste problem, isn't really a problem because of maybe the Qatari or the population or the way they live, but it's maybe a normalized thing in most developed countries, and it should be handled on a global stage and not just, Qatari's privilege, you know what I mean? I think, do you think?
Oh, of course. And we were just driving the problem into Qatar because this is where we as an executive team have the most experience from. And this is an extremely pressing problem across the world. And that's why we have a lot of programs across the world as well to tackle this issue. And so I was just focusing on Qatar, not as a means of any offense, but just because we have the most experience in this country.
Thank you, Nathan, for your example. So we can go straight into demonstrate. And demonstrating is a part of the Gaia framework that I feel is very unique to our competition, because this is where students who have come together to put together a project can showcase it to their schools. Even in our conference, we have a dedicated section where they can really present everything that they've learned, and they can give a rundown of what it is inside the format of videos or in other forms of media. And this is obviously a way to not only educate others of the service projects, but also to inspire them to see this is what the youth can do. We can do it, so why can't you?
Thank you so much, everyone. That is so insightful. And this shows exactly how we can all implement this. This was just an example of one issue, as Nathan said, that we face in Qatar, but that can be seen all over the world, just like so many other issues. And this is something that we need to tackle all together. But what we would like to stress is that this isn't something that can necessarily only be tackled on an international scale, but rather needs to be dealt with at local levels. So we want to encourage everyone here today to establish something such as the Gaia Award that can motivate the youth to implement SDG projects. And as Kayana said, this is how we motivate everyone and inspire everyone to take action. And despite the fact that it is an award and we do have a winner that obviously receives funding and loads of help, everyone is motivated to take part, because despite the fact that there is one winner, everyone who takes part has the fulfillment and the satisfaction of implementing a great program that helps so many people within our own communities. And so we've talked about the skills and what MUN is and all the projects that we as a team implement and that can be applied anywhere over the world. But now I'd like to focus on, well, these are all great projects, but how do we really engage the youth in them? How do we make sure that it isn't just us organizing them and no one taking part, but rather everyone is interested in what we do? And so Nora here today is going to talk us through how exactly we maximize youth engagement in our events.
Okay, so the question is, how do we engage youth in this advocacy work? So we have many members of the Thymen executive team here, and that happens through selecting the most engaging issues for the agenda, especially when it relates to SDG 13. So that process to choose the issues sort of works within three parts. You have, the first is to listen and research, the second is to reach out, and then lastly is to educate, all working within the framework of, something that's been repeated multiple times, which is questioning the status quo and keeping in mind youth voice and passion. So when we look at, the process of, choosing issues, which is a very lengthy process because, our world isn't perfect. So it starts with the executive team members to position themselves in the delegates' position, because at the end of the day, it is an MUN conference. Delegates are joining to have fruitful debates, to have exciting debates where they can join and have fun, as well as learn. And then with that, they channel the countries and the delegations, the politics and perspectives, just the very convoluted parts of politics, of the issues we face in our world. And they use that to take multiple perspectives to incite great debate. Because you can't have interest if it's not interesting. And then you have also, of course, with different committees, you have to choose different themes, whether it's economic or social, or, whatever theme it may relate to. And then, because, especially, Julia, you're an executive member, you have to realize that when you're choosing issues, you want the different committees to be interesting to multiple ranges of people. Like, I might enjoy more socially relevant issues, and you might enjoy more economically relevant issues. So it's also extremely crucial to keep that in mind and to, keep youth perspectives in mind, especially in the countries that we live in. In Thymen, there's a lot of issues that have to do with, the Middle East or Asia or, the entire continent that we live on. And that sort of ties in with, on the research reports, you have the youth voice sections that relates to this, which is engaging youth in this advocacy work. Research reports are essentially briefs on the issues in the different committees. And within all of those research reports in Thymen, you have entire sections dedicated to how youth can be included, how youth themselves, regardless of what country, what age, can make a difference, whether it's issues of, war and militaries to, hunger. which ties into also QAD-MUN and DC-MUN, which are both respective schools' MUN clubs. So, on the topic of, engaging delegates, Julia, how do you ensure that delegates in your school club represent diverse demographics of age and gender or, whatever?
So as you said, there are so many different people that attend our conferences, and because of their different ages and their different genders and backgrounds, it is hard to focus on issues that interest them all together. But what binds us all together, not only on this panel, but in all of our conferences, is the fact that we're all youth and we're all part of our community as young people, and we like to see action. And so as Nora said, throughout the research reports, we focus on the action that we can take as young people, and we make that central to all of our issues. And so that's really how we bind everyone together, despite the fact that there are everything from 11-year-olds to 18-year-olds and completely different backgrounds. As you can see from this panel, we are all come from very different places, but we bind together because we're all part of the youth and we all want to see action implemented, despite the fact that we are not the real change makers, unfortunately, in our communities.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And, on the topic of different issues, it's very important that in MUN conferences, especially such as Thymen, you have to have outreach and discussion with different UN entities and different educators. So in terms of Thymen itself, they collaborate with the UNODC, which is the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. And what happens is the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime comes in and has workshop sessions with the chairs of Ccpcga, which is a committee in Thymen. And with that, what happens is resources and guides are created for other, possible MUN conferences, which just ensures the continuity of the issues and solutions that can happen, is that everything can be sustainable. Resources are created and they're used, and it becomes sort of like the structure of different MUN conferences, which is extremely important. And with that, that also engages with outreach and discussion, which is going to be talked about more, and how the UNODC and Ccpcga and Thymen all relate to each other. And that's the question to Abdallah, which is how does the Ccpcga ensure that youth voice is heard?
Thank you, Nora. So the Ccpcga is a committee in Thymen and in other Model United Nations conferences that allows the youth to specifically and directly communicate to the United Nations by submitting resolutions that are actually looked by the policymakers, the people that make change, and the people responsible for operating the world. So it is a very important and critical aspect of Model United Nations because it puts a foot into the actual United Nations and allows the Model United Nations people and the delegates and the youth to be heard by the policymakers, the people that make the change, and the people responsible for how we're living our lives, which is why it is a very critical and important aspect of Model United Nations, and very, very critical in making our voices heard.
Thank you so much, Abdullah. And I'd like to link this to Kayana's point. The tree planting and beach events and all of our service projects really ensure that we see the reality of the issues that we treat. But then we go into working with change makers and the UNODC, and that brings into reality the work that we do and how important it is and how applicable it is to so many different organizations worldwide. Thank you so much, Abdullah, and thank you, Nora, for your points. I'd like to move on to Khalid once again, and I'd like to talk about how we go from education on advocacy to action itself and how you can do so in your own communities as well.
Debating as a youth always gives me this special feeling where I feel like I want to do more, and I just feel like I can make my voice be heard across like a million miles. I feel like a lot of people in this audience feel the same way too whenever you're debating about topics that you're passionate about. Being motivated is the first part and the most integral part of going from debate to action. And it's also, I'm sure that most of you in the audience have already passed this step since you are here in the TQ student panel and you're motivated to learn. The second step, which is a bit more complicated, is joining programs and activities so as to build skills and connect with people, and through those connections you would receive feedback. Now, how do people receive feedback? Well, you need to look and listen, not hear, but actually listen, because that's a very common thing that people mistake. Also, when you're going from debate to action, it's integral that it's not integral to join a program or join a workshop or anything like that, as people can join discussions on social media or just join discussions on with your friends, and from those discussions you can take the feedback and the information gained and build upon your ideas. Take me for example. How have I moved on from just debating to actually taking action? Well, I joined the Model 9 Nations program, the one on the right. It's the blue one. And of course, you don't need to join MUN. Like I said, you can join any other project, any other program. You don't even need to actually join a program. You can just take feedback from other people and you can build upon it yourself. When I joined the Model 9 Nations, I was really passionate about seeing what climate action was. I was really interested in it. And I wanted to know how much impact I could have as a part of the youth, and how I could lead the people around me. And when I joined the Model 9 Nations, I actually didn't expect to join as an executive, but when I did, I was like, it was a really happy moment because I was finally able to, make programs in which people could participate in, and they could, from there, that could be their form of climate action. Another point is that whenever you're trying to get feedback, you always need to ask a lot of questions. This is a very big problem that I see. People don't listen, okay? They don't listen, they just hear. They don't contemplate the words that's coming into their brains. They just hear, and they're paying attention to something else. That's actually a very common issue that I had. And thankfully I noticed this habit, and I stopped it because it made a lot of people annoyed. After this, receiving feedback can sometimes be taken as criticism. I really hate people who they take criticism from feedback, as it just shows me what type of person they are. As feedback to me is something that's always positive. It's something that whenever you receive it, you should be happy that you received it. Why are they wasting their time trying to talk to you, right? They're wasting their time talking to you about changing your own program, and you're not paying attention. You think it's an attack. What's this, right? So what I had done for this step is that I joined the Russian the Russian Economic Forum in St. Petersburg, and maybe you don't know it, but it's called SPIF. And while I was there with the MUN program, I had connected with other Russian students and asked them about reviewing my project, which was, the same project, the renewable energy project that Mariam talked about, and Kayana. After we talked about it, I noticed just how much knowledge they have. This just proved to me that, the people are smarter than me. Never be too prideful. So much people are smarter than you. Okay. So when I talked to these Russian students, they pointed out every single major flaw that I had with my project, and I was just amazed. So I just kept on asking questions, and asking questions is so important to getting feedback, that if you don't ask questions, what's the point of feedback? That's a sign of disrespect too. You need to ask questions to keep the person with you engaged. You need to keep their thoughts connecting, and you need to keep them engaged in the conversation. You need to make the conversation rich. Don't waste your time talking about how their day was, for example. That's a no-go, because time is short. You never know if you're gonna ever see them again.
Khalid, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. And I would just like to say this is relatable to everyone on this panel. I know I was looking around and we were all nodding along as you were talking, yes, this is very relatable. And not only to us.
From experience. That's
yes. and we all have the same experiences, and I'm sure the people in the audience do too. And I'd like to hark back to your point when you were talking about not only taking part in MUN, because I know that your experiences have been so wonderful and so extensive, but I'd like to go to Nathan to talk about how we can create opportunities where there are none, how we don't necessarily have to take part in MUN, but really any opportunities that are around us, and how we can create our own. So can you expand on that, please?
Thank you, Julia. And I'd like to quote the famous Uncle Ben: "With great power comes great responsibility." And in my opinion, with knowledge comes the responsibility to take action. And so we can ask the question, how do we create student-led programs to drive action in our communities? Because once we have the knowledge, we still need help. We still need guidance as youth, especially, to take action. And as we've talked today with Kayana and Shangtong and Julia as well, there are multiple organizations that we can reach out to as the youth, as people, to get guidance to set up our own initiatives. And with us in our panel today, we have some individuals who have gone the extra mile to take initiative to create their own projects. So could I first call upon Abdullah to talk about his project with water sustainability and how he was able to implement this in his community?
Thank you very much, Nathan. So I was a part of the Youth for Climate project, and one of my sub-projects to that was creating water sustainability through hygiene and recycling. So not many people know this, but Qatar Foundation is located in Education City, and the entire campus is run by sustainable water recycled in a plant. So my project was to take that idea and implement it throughout other communities. The way I did that was initiate a product launch by getting these small accessories you can put on your taps, in your sinks, etc., that can save effectively 20% of the water that you're not even using. These small little changes throughout our school and our lives won't make a difference to us, but will make a huge one to the environment. This is the reason this project is so important. It's the small things you don't recognize that make the big difference. So water sustainability and the thing we take for granted will soon become a very necessary and valuable resource in our lives in the future, which is why this is a really big project that can help us in the future.
And so, just a second. So, Abdullah, while your project used accessories to try prevent water wastage, could I ask about any issues you had with implementing these within a school? Because for anyone in the audience who wants to do something like this, isn't there going to be issues with manufacturing, sourcing these accessories and so on? How were you able to deal with this?
Well, as a young person, I faced the same problems we all do. Adults weren't listening to me. School administrations, people on top that are in charge of logistics, etc. It was very hard to get past them and through them, which is why I needed to keep being persistent and keep engaging with my administration and with my teachers, etc., in order to have my project done. This is a big issue that many of us face when wanting to create new projects, which is why we need to keep persisting and allow our voices to be heard so that we can implement change in the future for Qatar and for the world.
Thank you, Abdullah, for sharing your project with us.
Nathan, I think we've come full circle, actually. I think our everything we've been saying is really summarized by Abdullah so nicely. The actions in our community really come together in our projects, and that is what we would like to do for the last few minutes of our panel, is focus on the work we do in MUN, but on a different angle. So we'd like to share with you a policy statement and then a resolution which have been created in our conferences, and then briefly talk through how this can be implemented in our communities. So Kayana, can you give us just an introduction into this resolution that will be brought up shortly?
So before I start, Julia, actually, can you introduce to the audience what a policy statement and a resolution is?
Of course. So a policy statement is just a very brief speech given at the beginning of a conference to introduce the issues that we are treating. And that is exactly what, Kayana, you're going to be talking through today. So would you like to start?
Of course. So the issue I will be speaking on today is measures to build renewable and efficient energy systems in schools. Very relevant to what all of us have been talking about today. The youth and renewable energy are the key drivers of our future. For far too long, schools all over the world have been dependent on unsustainable energy resources, making the transition to sustainable energy very challenging. However, the delegate of Thymen believes that it is necessary to implement renewable and efficient energy systems in schools. As we walk forward into times that call for urgent climate action, the education sector must contribute to reducing its environmental impact. We need not to harm our planet to raise brilliant minds. Instead, we can grow together.
Thank you so much, Kayana, or should I say delegate of Thymen. That is a term we use in our conferences, and it gets quite annoying to have to repeat it every time. The next slide, if you could please, is a QR code of the resolution that Kayana so eloquently introduced. Because we are slightly running out of time, we would like to just go through a couple of the clauses and explain how exactly we would implement these. Starting with clause 1, Shangtong, would you like to give us just a little brief introduction on how we would implement this?
So if you were to scan the QR code, you would see the resolution, and clause 1 of the resolution is about raising awareness on the need of sustainable technologies within our school. And this is definitely something that we can bring into our school communities, as we have already done in our school, Doha College. Our club, DCMUN, started this newsletter where monthly we release articles on the necessity of transitioning to more sustainable means of using energy within our own schools. And this has really motivated and educated the students within our community and within our schools from all various ages on the importance of sustainable energy and preserving our energy reserves.
And this one clause is really the crux of this entire panel. The education that we instill in all of the projects that we have talked about today is what really implements the change that we want to see in our community on the Sustainable Development Goals. Abdullah, do you have a few last words to say about the resolution before we end today?
A quick summary I have prepared for the resolution. So this is a bit in MUN form, so mind my language. The resolution at hand is a resolution which talks about all the key and critical points of the issue. As we go through this resolution, we are able to see how it talks about how member states work in cooperation with the schools to raise awareness about the importance of renewable energy and the nature of renewable resources and other critical aspects of solving this issue. However, the reason the resolution is so effective is because it was created using the SMART layout. The SMART criteria stands for specific, measurable, achievable, and time-bound. These are the building blocks to a clause, and is the reason why this resolution is so effective.
Thank you so much. So now that we've given an example of exactly what an MUN speech is like, we have shown how these resolutions can be implemented by us in our communities. This draws our panel to a close. This is exactly what we would like to leave you guys with, this idea of what we do in MUN and what you can achieve through MUN in your own communities or your own projects comes back full circle to impact the Sustainable Development Goals in your communities. And this is exactly how we as the youth can impact change. I would like to thank you all for joining our panel today. Thank you for your keen interest in what we've been saying so far. And I would like to thank my amazing fellow panelists for all their incredible points, their incredible topic choices, and their incredible projects, which have really, really benefited our community back at home. Thank you all once again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Grazie mille,
Thank you.
everybody.
Grazie mille.
Grazie.